Good afternoon. Today we gather to pay respects to a Canadian hero, John Robert Gallagher. John Robert sacrificed his life fighting for peace, freedom, dignity, human rights, and social justice. He was a former member of Canadian forces, and he was part of peacekeeping operations in Bosnia in 2003. After military, he was pursuing a career of a scholar. Last spring, as a volunteer, he joined Kurdish forces in northern Syria to fight Islamic State. Before setting off for Kurdistan, he wrote a very powerful essay, which he posted on his Facebook page, where he explains the reasons behind his decision. Please let me quote his letter. John Robert wrote, "Slavery, fascism, and communism were all bad ideas, which required costly sacrifice before they were finally destroyed. In our time, we have a new bad idea, theocracy." He explains that the war is ongoing in the Middle East is a war against theocracy. But he warns us there is another distant front of this war in the Western society. Our war is not just about theocracy, it's between those who still believe in the Enlightenment, that self-determination is the most basic and most crucial of all human rights, that the first duty of every man in society is to defend the mechanisms by which we make ourselves free, and those who ultimately lack the capacity to believe in anything. He concludes, "I am prepared to give my life in the cause of averting the disaster we are stumbling towards as a civilization. I've been fighting this battle in one way or another for my entire life. I hope for success. The rest in the God's hands." John Robert Gallagher was killed in an ISIS attack on November 4th, 2015.
John Robert was not rash or adventure-seeking. He was thoughtfully committed to trying to help in the fight against ISIS in the area of the world most urgently affected by their actions. He knew what he was doing, and although he expected to come home, I know he was genuinely happy to be there fighting alongside the Kurdish people in Iraq and Syria. It has been difficult for me to know what to write today. Only a few people who are there in Calgary right now have met my son. You may know about him from media coverage because he died, but I would like you to know a little bit more about him as a person, as he lived. First of all, he wouldn't like me calling him John Robert in public like this. As an adult, he preferred to be called John, but I can't really imagine that. He is John Robert to me. John Robert has always been very intelligent and very articulate. He has always tried to do the right thing, even when he was a little boy. At one of his sleepovers at his best friend's house, I remember he called home to ask if he was allowed to watch the movie Batman, because he was afraid I wouldn't approve of it. He wouldn't describe himself as such, but he was an idealistic. He believed that an individual could make a difference. When he told me that he wanted to go to the Middle East, he said, "You know, Mom, there are more important things in this world than just living a quiet life." Everything that has happened since November 4th has shown me that he was right. Because of my son's life and his death, because of his essay and the way that people across the country and around the world have responded to his writing and his actions, I believe there is more understanding about this political situation and more determination to address this threat. It is no small thing to me, as his mother, to hear him praised as an example of someone who is willing to endanger his own life to help others. In his last Facebook page and phone messages to me, John Robert told me not to worry about him. These were the last messages I had from him until a few days ago. His laptop had been damaged on its way home from Iraq, so we have had only gained access to his files. In the past week, my daughter Erin was able to retrieve the following, which John Robert wrote for us in case he did not return home. He wrote, What can we say to each other now? I hope I've been honest. I hope I've been brave. I have loved my life. That means I love you all, and I hope you know that. Do your best. I love you.
He fought for a cause he believed in. He fought for a cause he sacrificed his life for, to defeat a religious, fascist ideology that is spreading a corrupt caliphate across the continent. He witnessed the swift success of this corrupt ideology across the world, including here in North America, in Calgary, in Canada, in Europe, and especially in the Middle East. He urged all of us, the international community, to come together and purge for the sickness of this corrupt ideology that poisoning our society and defeat this ultimate evil. Many of you may ask why John chose and joined the Kurdish and Kurdish Peshmerga to fight ISIS. Well, I can say this. There is a saying among the Kurds have no friends but the mountain. Well, I can say this, John was a true and indeed a true Kurdish friend. He saw many reasons to join the Kurdish to fight against ISIS. He stated in his essay that the cause of a free and independent Kurdistan is important enough to be worth fighting for all on its own.
John Gallagher sacrificed his own life while trying to save many others. The lives of innocent civilians caught up in the devastation of war. He had dedicated himself to helping the Kurdish forces with the fight against the barbaric and unspeakably evil Islamic State, not as a soldier, but as a volunteer. He died fighting for the rights and the freedoms of these innocent and vulnerable men, women, and children, and through that demonstrated tremendous bravery and compassion. He was so young, yet such a courageous soul and a hero in many eyes. The Kurdish people thank him for all he's done for our country, for our people, and for all of humanity, for the devotion he had in aiding our people through these dark and dismal days. As a young Kurd and Canadian, I feel that John is an inspiration and should be remembered as someone who is committed to making the world a better place.
I had the honor of getting to know John while I was in Kirkuk, Iraq this May with a colleague of mine. And my time in Iraq, I spent 10 days traveling the front lines from Mosul in northern Iraq down to Kirkuk. And it would go as much as you would imagine. It was a very tense and uncomfortable time for me, which made meeting John that much more special, because John was none of that. Meeting John for the first time in a small Peshmerga base in Kirkuk, I immediately realized I was comfortable with him. He was a kind and gentle man, and especially spending an entire week with men and women who the strain of war and the stress of being in that environment clearly showed on them. And to have such a refreshing breath of fresh air from John, for me, was very, very impactful, and I'll always remember that. And in my brief time with him, I came to realize that men like him, men like him are what makes me proud to be Canadian.